Hey, Giants fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the Talk is Cheap podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the New York Giants. Now, before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read all of our content on NJ.com/Giants. Well, the Giants went out west to Lumen Field in Seattle and beat the Seahawks 29-20, which was honestly very unexpected in terms of that Seattle is a very, very tough place to play. We'll get into that more now with Ryan Novozinsky, who is one of the beat writers for the Giants here at NJ Advanced Media. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Chris, it is a whole lot different than the last time we talked, right? So I guess I'm doing good. The Giants are doing good. Not that the two are necessarily correlated, but a happier locker room is a much more, you get a lot more stories out of it. So I guess in that regard, I'm doing great. Um, we got this Giants team right here that's now within striking distance of a 500 record, which in this division goes a long way, as you know.
It's funny that you mentioned that. All I can think about when you said that now is like the South Park episode is one of the earlier ones where South Park beats the spread and the spread was like 42 points. That's why I think about the Giants when you're thinking about, hey, they're just getting 500. Hey, they're almost there. It's crazy.
Right.
But who would have saw this coming? I'm shocked personally. Honestly, I'm shocked myself. But hey, like you said, a talkative locker room is a better locker room when you have that. So we're going to get into our kickoff question. And now looking at the standings now after that 29-20 win over the Seattle Seahawks, the Giants are a game behind the Cowboys for second place in the East, even after it's still 5 games. So I know it's still early. The NFL.com has the playoff probability at 9%, so it's still very low. But is it time to start to think, Ryan, that the Giants may not be the worst team in this division?
It's kind of a tough question because you just don't know. Like this feels like the fool's gold division, right? Like you get, the Eagles are off to a weird start, as it's kind of trending towards where they finished off last season, right? The Cowboys are again a terrible start to their season. The Commanders, who would have thunk that this would have been the best team in this division, at least through 5 weeks. The Giants are getting a whole heck of a lot better. They're getting competent quarterback play. Obviously, Malik Neighbors is who he is, and he will probably. I'm gonna just throw out a guess and guess that he'll be back by next week. And then you have this Commanders team who has lightning in a bottle right now with Jaden Daniels, who's just obviously proven to be probably the rookie of the year, right? At least right now. You know, again, it's like that week one conversation we had. It's going to be him. Is it going to be Caleb? Is it going to be or Malik Neighbors? And that's kind of how it's played out so far, at least with Daniels and Neighbors. But to answer your question, I guess I would still say maybe on paper they're still the worst team in the division. And that's just because of how bad their secondary can be at times, and Daniel Jones has had a very consistent season so far, but that week one outlier where he was really, really bad, that still kind of, it sticks in the memory of Giants fans. Um, I think he's playing fine. I think a lot of these, position groups are playing fine, but comparatively speaking to these other teams in the division, who on paper at least should be a lot better, in the Cowboys and Eagles, and they're just not. Um, I don't really know what asking who's the best team or the worst team in this division. It's really not saying much because I think they're all kind of just bad teams, but for some reason, some of them have talented rosters, and the ones with the talented rosters should have that 4-1 record that Washington has, but they just kind of don't.
Yeah, I don't. This year it's got the feels in a sort of sense of 2020, where
Yeah.
we sit here and wait till the last week of the season, and that's when the Commanders, then the Washington football team wound up taking it, and it was just a dreck of a season. So much so it was just bad. I remember the Giants, and we're watching. And they're like, please let this happen. And then Doug Peterson pulled and put Nate Sudfeld in there. It's like, okay, yeah, we know
Right.
what they're trying to do. Anywho, I look at this, and I'm just looking at the Giants schedule. But then the team I really thought that was going to be the one that probably challenged for a division. The Cowboys, to me, their defense can't stop anybody. And it looks like something's imploding right now with say what you want. If you're a professional lip reader, I would love to talk to you to see what Dak was saying to CeeDee Lamb, or CeeDee Lamb was saying to Dak, or what have you.
It
They
looked
just
like
like to right to
didn't
implode.
he? It kind of looked like he's saying jump balls for jump. But I don't know. You're right. Like you have to be a professional lip reader to see what happens there.
And I would love to see Dak is he's that look he gave after was like something's not right
Yes.
there, and it's something brewing there, and all of something like the Eagles, like you said, they can't stop. Their defense is Jekyll and Hyde most of the time. Jekyll like being passive, so I could see a scenario where it's not saying, "Yay, we didn't finish the bottom," but I can see a scenario where the Giants legit finishes third, and if that's the case, that might change the whole trajectory. It may save Dable's job. It could get another quarterback in here, what have you, but it could change the whole entire trajectory of what this team could look like in the future. It's crazy to imagine we're even having this conversation. I know it's 5 games in, but it's crazy to think like, well, it's a small sample size, but I think we feel like we're at that point now.
It sure does. And but I think with the what we're seeing right now, at least what I'm seeing with this Giants team is when their pass rush gets going, they win the game, right? And it sounds so simple to say because it's such a big part of the NFL these days, but it's just kind of what's been the case for this team, and I think that's how Joe Shane kind of tried to build the team this summer. Obviously, with the Burns trade, Burns is starting to get going. Kayvon's starting to get going as a result. Dexter Lawrence is a complete wrecking ball. And he's putting up like he's got 6 sacks already, and he's a freaking nose tackle. I mean, it's insane. Um, so the Giants are going as they go because offensively things are kind of clicking well. Like my God, Chris, like I would not have dreamt in week one, after watching that Vikings game, which I guess, as we get further and further away from week one, it just, the Giants just lost to a really good buzzsaw of a team, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny. But anyways, the Giants offense, I could not have imagined in week one thinking that they would be at least competent. They're competent. At times during that Seattle game, it looked good. You got Tyrone Tracy in there. You get Darius Slayton. They had some deep. They attacked downfield, Chris. Like it was unbelievable. Like I just did not think that would be a part of a game of the equation when you have Malik Neighbors out. But the Giants did it right. So as their pass rush excels, and it really has in their 2 wins. Gosh, it was like really really good against Cleveland. And then really strong this past week too. At least with Dexter putting up the numbers that he did. As the pass rush goes, the Giants will go because they have enough complementary weapons around them on offense, and the secondary is actually playing fine of late to where they can that can be the motor. So what has to be buzzing is that pass rush because their other defensive weapons, when they're going, the other defensive weapons can go too, right? Like Deontay Banks could actually have a good game. And then on offense, again, it's that complementary football that we hear after every win. Um, when the pass rush kind of sets them up nicely, then the Giants offense can take over, and Daniel Jones, who's having, a very efficient season, not MVP by any means, but very efficient and really strong season. Um, then when they're set up well, they can go, man, because they have the pass protection now. And beyond that, they have the run blocking now. So again, the Giants will only go as far. Long way to say the Giants will only go as far as the pass rush will allow them to go. And my God, it's been great. It's been good in their 2 wins at least.
Yeah, it has. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into that because when you look at the stats, you're thinking like, especially around this time of year, you usually see the edge rushers at the top of the league in terms of sacks. Right now, there's four players in the league right now with more than 6 sacks. You have Aiden Hutchinson with 6.5 sacks. Will McDonald's of the Jets, and maybe it's something in the water at MetLife, I don't know. Will McDonald has 6 sacks. Kyle Van Noy of the Baltimore Ravens, he's got 6 sacks. And then you got Lawrence. And to me, at so far this season, he's looked like an all-pro player. Again, he looks like that type of guy that can change it. He's got 12 pressures according to Pro Football Reference, and that's 30% of the team's total pressures is 41. Ryan, why has Lawrence been so effective this season?
You know what? It's so funny too because there are games there where it's much like in basketball where you hear about like you heard this a lot with like Tatum in this past playoffs. It's like Tatum, his impact his gravitational pull is almost what makes him, a great player kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the case with Lawrence too, because all these opposing offensive lines have to double team him so much that he almost makes the defense and all these other players around him in the pass rush like better because they're focusing so much attention on Lawrence that he's playing so well. But the funny thing with him, and kind of is another supplemental additive piece to it, is that it doesn't matter sometimes if he's being double teamed. He can just bull rush right through it. I mean, there were times that Seattle, they tried to kind of go, they would try the double team at times, and it just didn't work because he's such a wrecking ball down there. And then it's, there were the few times that they tried to ISO him, it was as predictable as a result as you can imagine. It was just completely just bull rushes his way towards Geno Smith and then takes him down. That's Dexter Lawrence. I mean, he's just a guy that you look at him up close and you could tell, oh yeah, he's probably going to be a beast of the field, but then it's almost like the athleticism is there too. The strength is obviously there. This guy is just a complete dominator down there, and if he continues this path, we've talked about this quite a bit, but this is just a guy that continue this path, the path that he's on, which has already been completely dominant, and this is a guy that could end up in Canton one day, and I don't say that lightly. This is like we shouldn't give Hall of Fame starts to someone who's 26 years old, but that's how good of a player he is. He's maybe the most impactful defensive tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, it's crazy. He's like, okay, I'll take this. Do you think he's on a level? Do you think he finishes top three in defensive player of the year voting this
I
year?
think he does. I think he does. I did a story today that was, if you look at Aaron Donald's first ever defensive player of the year, the first year he won it was 2017. Um, uh, Dexter Lawrence is on pace to completely blow those numbers out of the water, which is just fascinating already. Like you just hear that, right? And the reason we use Donald is because when Donald retired, that was the guy that immediately stuck out as, okay, who's going to kind of take over that mantle as, man, like this is just the guy that what a headache to go up against. And it's I think it's Dexter Lawrence, man. So I definitely think that he will finish in top three, and I mean, heck, like I think he has a case to certainly to win it, man. At some point, at least, he's Dexter
Yeah,
Lawrence has to get a defensive player of the year award.
yeah, he does. And I gotta say this, I gotta give Joe Shane some credit here. The fact that he signed the extension this year in May, as opposed to wait until
Hmm.
this free agency or what have you. Oh, the fact I'm looking at the numbers now, and granted the cap hits, I see it. They're right. This year's cap at 14 million. It jumps to 24 next year. But looking at what Chris Jones is getting paid, looking at the money that these interior defensive linemen are getting paid right
Hmm.
now, yeah, it's going to look like a bar at this point. It's going to look like a bargain right now that they got him for this. Now, will all of a sudden they get to nudge going 2 years from now saying, I think it's time to revisit. Yeah, sure, but at least for now, you're getting a bargain in terms of that. So, and you can always convert the money to a
Right.
bonus. So, yeah, it's a good times right now for in terms of Dexter Lawrence and what he does. I could see him potentially, and it's tough for a defensive line. I could see it. Like, granted, if he has a season like he's doing this year, he finishes like 18 sacks, which if he does finish that way, yeah, God bless him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he deserves that. He deserves that one for it. But he's on pace for that. But if he does finish with that way, I don't see there's any way, like especially at that position, because we know the glory goes to the edge rushers
Hmm.
and the cornerbacks and also at that point you got to seriously think about consider. I think he finishes second. I really do, and I think I would go a step further. Even though Chris Jones gets the notoriety in Kansas City, being at Kansas City's on TV, national TV all the time, it's one of those things where I think he beats him out. Like they're like, he did that with the Giants. Yeah, okay, yeah, he deserves that one. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. And again, it's the way he does it too. I mean, you talk about like there's it's again, like you said, with these edge rushers, it's a lot of, it's obviously a lot of strength, but it's a lot of finesse in some of their moves and how they get to the quarterback. But like with Lawrence, it's just a lot of these bull rushes just completely running over these other grown men on the other side of the ball that are built like crazy. And this is just a guy that's he's a complete wild card down there, and that he changes the way that some of these offense coordinators are having to scheme around the Giants. It's unreal. It's unreal what he's been able to do.
It's definitely crazy. It definitely is. Now, we're going to switch our attention over to the offensive side of the ball. And there were a couple players who stood out, especially with Malik Neighbors being out, that helped that Giants and that surprise win. I'm still thinking about like, wow, how the heck did that happen? But running back Tyrone Tracy and wide receiver Darius Slayton, they stood out. They needed to do that to step up in that offense. And Tracy rushed for 128 yards for 18 carries, and Slayton finished with 8 catches with 122 yards and a touchdown. Now I know Neighbors is looking; he's going to be coming back, and he's not. And Slayton may be impacted by those numbers and targets, especially when Neighbors is in that offense. But at this point in the season, do you think they can be relied upon to give you similar type outputs for, like, say, the next 3 games?
You know what? I think that with what Tracy was able to do, especially, I mean, I thought at the beginning of the year they probably should have done, a by committee approach in the running back room, to start with. But if nothing else, this kid just proved immediately that yes, he can be pretty much a focal point of this offense if he wants to be relied upon in the run game a little bit more. And that's because you're trying to replace Saquon Barkley's impact, and that's fine. But Devin Singletary, as good as he is, and I think he is, there's just that he's not Saquon Barkley, right? And so I think if you have a good mix of Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy, um, who obviously proves, in injury what he can do. And I think that was kind of what this game was for the Giants, right? When you have these injuries to Singletary and you have these injuries to Neighbors, let's see what these other guys can do when they step in this role. Slayton obviously was the one that did it in the wide receiver room. And Tracy's the one that did it in the running back room, which is going to go a long way for him, especially with how young he is. Now with Slayton, it's kind of it's another wrinkle to his, scenario here is he's about to be expiring. That was a good little showcase game. Like, hey, I can still kind of be a deep threat, even though I have these drops every now and then, but I could be a deep threat. I could be a guy that you rely on, catches the 40-yard ball from Jones and then the 30-yard touchdown. He's somebody that, long pass, deep pass game, short pass game, he can be, dependable. And he kind of proved that again, and with having this number one receiver role on Sunday against a really tough Seahawks secondary, mind you. But then, again with Tracy, like I can't stress it enough. This is a guy that what he did on Sunday was he proved, hey, lean on me some more too. Like it doesn't have to be 70% of the snaps go to or 70% of the of the rushes go to Singletary. I can be relied upon here too. Whether that's in the pass game, whether that's just in the run game too. I think what Tracy did too was also he showed he could be a decent pass blocker too, which was also really important for this Giants offense. Um, yeah, I really liked the game that both of them had, kind of rising out from a bad situation of two injuries, two really key injuries, and I thought, quite frankly, this seemed like the most predictable blowout loss yet. But there the Giants are, they win by 9, and it was complete shock to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the one thing I look at Slayton because I think he's the key. And if you want to make this sustainable, in terms of you mentioned that speed, and we've seen so many times now with these defenses playing that cover two shell and so much, and they don't want anything to be deep. The more times you can have somebody to occupy a safety's
Mhm.
eyes, it really makes them think. The more it just helps the off, especially I think for Tracy. Tracy's one like, please, he's probably looking at Slayton like, please do what you can every single week to do what you did because it just opens up so much room in that in the running lanes and they can't really start to load the box up. So for me, I'm looking at Slayton. I'm just like, okay, guy, you got we've seen that he's capable of doing this. We've seen that he has the talent enough to
Mhm.
do that. It's a matter of consistency, and this is what separates players from getting those big lucrative contracts to you're fighting every year, going 1 year to 1 year to 1 year, and we see and I know the Giants fans and everybody else have seen this what's happened. Like they've been waiting for him to consistently play like this. Now's the time to do it, and surely line his pocket. So to me, I'm looking at Slayton. I'm just like, come on, man. You got to be consistent here at this point. You can't come back next week against the Bengals of all teams and go, yeah, I'm going to just finish with 5 catches for like 23 yards and hopefully not fumble, what have you. So it's one of those things, like, and I'll even go with this one too. I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now with this, and I'll ask you this: there's a lot of uncertainty right now with this future roster. Do you think if he continues, even if you say he finishes with 600 yards, if he finishes with say 40 catches, but he shows, especially towards the end of the season, that is capable of doing that, would you be willing to re-sign him?
It's man. I guess at this point, yes, I would. And only because like you said, like he can be. You got to have a little bit, I guess, more consistency week to week. But again, a lot of that's because how huge percentage of the Giants' offense production has gone to Neighbors this year. But when he has been, leaned upon, it's just, he's a solid wide receiver option. Maybe he can be the number two guy, alongside Neighbors. And then whatever they do with the quarterback, it's maybe that's kind of who he is, because I just don't think that with how little they've been able to trust Jalen Hyatt this year, who's got another 0 target game last week, and even though he was hyped up all week to be this guy that was supposed to step up in the absence of Neighbors, he was another one that was supposed to be that. Um, if they rely on Slayton this much, and they really like him, and it seems like they do, if Slayton can kind of, he's kind of a tough negotiator. He's proven to be a tough negotiator with Joe Shane. Um, if they can get him on a reasonable kind of deal to come back, and be that number two receiver, I don't see why not. But again, I really would just depend on what his ask is, because he's been one to really be, to really haggle with Shane, especially in the past couple of years. Even crescendoing in this offseason where there was again some drama that he sat out OTAs a little bit. But yeah, again, if it's reasonable, if the cost is reasonable, and he's a guy that knows his own value, I don't see why you wouldn't try to go re-sign Slayton.
He's. I wonder if he's going to David Merton, Trey Smith right now, trying to do his best Jerry Maguire impersonation. Come on, I want you guys to jump and show me the money. Darius, you've only got 600 yards. Can't do it. Well, I'm going to get it. Dang it! All right, cool. Seeing that stuff. All right, we're going to turn our attention now to the Cincinnati Bengals, who coming off a tough 41-38 overtime loss, where they're looking at their kicker and going, "Thanks for missing that," and letting Justin Tucker of all people go down and kick one back and make that one. The Bengals are coming in at 1-4, which I know they struggle, but you figured Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, hey, they'd be better, but they're coming in at 1-4. I mean, and they enter the game, but yet to me, even though I know their offense is ranked 9th overall, their defense is ranked 26th, but they're coming in as favorites. And the last time I saw, and this is not a gambling podcast, but last I saw it was like 3.5 that the Giants were underdogs. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. But you do have Jamar Chase, like that explosive player, can run downfield. Ryan, how's the secondary stop Jamar Chase?
Oh man, it's gonna be tough. Because that's the thing. Like someone asked me the other day that just kind of like previewing Bengals and stuff like that, and they're like, oh man, like if this Bengals team's 1-4, it was just someone that was very casual NFL fan, like they're 1-4, like how bad has Burrow been playing? And I was like, no. They're still like a top five pass game in the entire league. I think Chase ranks second in passing yards, and Burrow he's up there in passing yards, and then he has, what's it called? I think he has the most touchdowns in the league, most passing touchdowns. So yeah, their passing game is still tough, and I bet you that's what is keeping the Bengals favored there, is really just because of how shaky the Giants secondary, especially Deontay Banks, has been this season. Right, it's going to be up to Banks. I actually wrote this for tomorrow, so I'm glad you asked it. It's going to be up to
Preview, nice.
Banks to really try to shut him down, and with that, yeah, exactly. With that, it's the receivers he's gone up against. I think I forget whether it was Shane Bowen or the reporter who asked this in the question, but they described it as he's kind of going up against a murderer's row of receivers here. He had to go up against Justin Jefferson, obviously. Then he has to go up against Terry McLaurin, um, then CD Lamb, and then obviously he got called out last week because of his pretty terrible effort against CD Lamb, and now after doing really well against DK Metcalf, he bet a really good game last week. His reward is going up against Jamar Chase, who might be the best of all of them, depending on where you stand of the Jamar Chase versus Justin Jefferson debate. Now it's gonna be up to him. Can he at least have a respectable game, replicate what he did against DK Metcalf this week? If that's the case, then yes, I think it's going to be that close. I think it's going to be, 3.5, kind of, that almost makes sense. And I would even say if Banks can figure out a way to keep Chase to where, he was kind of cold in the beginning of the year, if you can even get some of that per level of production, or keep him to that diminished level of production, like you did against Terry McLaurin in week 2, Banks, then you're going to be fine. The Giants are going to be fine. The Giants are going to have a really good chance to send Cincinnati to 1-5, probably get Zach Taylor fired, and then Dayball's job is saved. He's 3-3, 500. You're within striking distance of a little playoff spot here. Now, if he can't do that, which is again a really tall order, then I think the Giants are in deep trouble against this Bengals team, who 1-4, yes, but I would put a lot of that on their defense and some of the other things they haven't been able to get going, and definitely not the what they've been doing in the past game. There is nothing wrong with how their receivers have been doing. Their pass game has been tremendous, obviously, as it is every year. But the other stuff, if they can neutralize that, because that's going to be it's going to be a downfield kind of focus, and doesn't even matter downfield wise for Jamar Chase. He can do, he's a yak machine too. I am very eager to see what Deontay Banks can do, because this is on him, man. This is definitely on him.
Yeah, it really is. And on the flip side, when I'm looking at this Giants offensive line, sacks wise, when it comes to get like Daniels getting sacked, hasn't happened that much this year. So I'm surprised. Like 12 sacks they've gotten better. I mean, it could be the Browns who've Deshaun Watson and their messes that they have there. He's been sacked 26 times, and that's a cluster up there in terms of that. But do you think this is a game where, and the Bengals haven't looked like the Bengals of a couple of years ago, where they really were getting after the pressure, and losing Jesse Bates kind of helps towards them not being as vaunted of a defense as they used to be. Do you think this is a game where they can at least give Daniel Jones some time to look downfield and get some shots downfield and make some explosive plays?
Oh, I don't see why not. Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, this is not the Bengals team of yore. I think they're having a pretty terrible pass rush season, from at least from what I've seen so far. The Giants O line it's not even just like it's serviceable. It's good right now. Like, they are pass protecting pretty great. That is a credit. I think that for all the flack that we give Joe Shane, this offseason, and just in after last year's, how terrible it was, he recognized, again, a lot of this is kind of his fault too, because Azudo didn't pan out and Evan Neal obviously didn't pan out. He was tasked with, when he first got this job, to fix the offensive line, and he tried to do it through the draft. Obviously, like I just mentioned, didn't work out with Neal and Azudu, but he gets these guys that, quite frankly, I thought they would be just little stopgaps, little like, all right, yeah, like this is a patchwork offensive line, like nothing to see here. Like, we might have some games, but we're going to be really inconsistent. No. He got these veterans in Illuminor and Greg Van Roten, and the development of John Michael Schmitz has been something to watch this year. And then Runyon, obviously, and obviously on that right side of the line too, you have Van Roten and Illuminor. They have that built-in chemistry with Carmen Basillo, their offensive line coach, who, all three of those guys were with the Raiders last year. So you have that, you have the pre-built chemistry, and it's just making for a much better offensive line this year. So yes, I do think that with this regressing Bengals pass rush, and the improvement of this offensive line, I think this is a perfect spell for the Giants can have a pretty decent game. And heck, maybe even look downfield. That's something that Jones promised this past week. I didn't really believe him, but he was able to do that at least a handful of times. Look downfield for Darius Slayton. Now when Neighbors returns, it's going to be another guy that it just adds another weapon to their arsenal there. That hey, I would love to see what Malik Neighbors can do against a Bengals secondary that has not had a good go at it so far this year.
It's crazy to think that this game was, when you look at the schedule, it's almost like, to steal the word from Doc Rivers, is a scheduled loss. This one, it doesn't look so much like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're still waiting for the inactives and actives, the injury reports and everything. But at this point right now, what's your prediction for the outcome for this game?
Oh man, I think it just depends on the two things I mentioned before. Is the pass rush going to have a good solid game? I think they can. Um, that's obviously the main cog here. But with this game in particular, the onus is on this secondary, who had a pretty darn good game against a pretty prolific Seahawks offense, at least in the early goings of this season. The onus is on them. If the secondary plays well, if Deonte Banks plays well, then congratulations. There you go. You got a darn good game. Head in your way for the Giants. They'll be able to keep it close at least. If they don't, I mean, it's gonna be a long night for that Giants secondary, and I think Giants fans. So I'm leaning more towards Banks is going to play a little bit more motivated, but again, I've been wrong with that before too. So, but to actually give you like a tangible prediction to pick one side of the fence, I'm gonna go with Banks is gonna be motivated, and this stays a close game, as that 3.5 point spread indicates.
Nice, nice. I'll go out on a limb here. Something about it. I think that the Bengals are leaking oil. I think Zach Taylor knows, especially with as much money, and the Bengals are not a team that are known for spending a lot of money. So
Hmm.
for their owners to go out there and spend it and not get the return that they've gotten so far, it ain't gonna go pretty. And it's
Hmm.
one of those things where their backs against the wall. Problem is they have to go on the road. And I know it's not a long trip from Cincinnati to New York. I know there's a lot and they still have that offense there. But I think that Giants defense has played well enough to the fact that they earned the benefit of the doubt to get pressure on Joe Burrow.
Hmm.
And he's not as mobile as to me, I still see he's not as mobile as he used to be, because he wouldn't be. He got banged up, he coming off of his injuries and stuff like that. I think this is one where the Giants could actually sneak away. I could see them being in this game late, and it's like finishing like with a 23-20 Giants win. And then from there on, who knows? But I about this game, just like looking at that one, I kind of got to feel I'm leaning towards that way. Now I've seen the injury report come out like on Fridays like this. Yeah, I might switch the other way, but as of now, this might be Giants might actually come away with a win here. Who knew?
Which of course
Who would
means
have
they're
thought?
going to have a blowout loss,
Yeah, I put
like
the
we always
kibosh
have to
on.
say.
So true. Ryan, as always, thank you very much for being on here. Check out Ryan and Daryl's work on NJ.com/Giants. They'll have all the coverage coming up from Sunday's game at MetLife Stadium. So for Ryan, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one. See ya.